If you've ever watched a terrifying film and thought to yourself, what would you do if you found yourself in this situation? This video is for you. Today we're going to be exploring horror movies where survival isn't just unlikely, it's nearly impossible. From relentless supernatural entities to sadistic killers, we'll dive into chilling scenarios that leave characters with zero chance of escaping. So dim the lights and grab your favorite snack. And let's get ready to face some of the most harrowing films that would leave even the bravest of viewers thinking twice about their survival skills. Cabin in the Woods follows 5 college friends who travel to a remote cabin for a getaway weekend, unaware that they're being manipulated by unseen forces. Now, of course, this movie plays into the normal horror movie tropes. You have the pretty girl, the smart guy, the jock, the stoner, and the virgin. Now, after everybody gets to the cabin, everything seems like a party, not knowing that everything they touch and everything they do has a counter reaction, causing creatures to be let loose in the woods, hunting for that specific person. So let's just think about it. If you go into the fridge and grab something to drink, you just unlocked more or less Jason Voorhees to come and try and kill you. Now, the odd thing about this movie is that the creatures only attack that said person who did that deed, or did that thing inside of the cabin, the ones that they're supposed to be locked onto. They don't just kill everyone randomly. And as I said before, the group is facing horrifying creatures like zombies or giant serpents, and they're systematically picked off due to their individual character flaws, aligning with, of course, those normal horror movie tropes, not knowing that the bigger reason of why they're being picked off or why they're even being sacrificed in and of itself is to appease the ancient gods, to prevent some kind of catastrophe. Now, we've never gotten a general understanding about this movie of knowing what the catastrophic event would be, but I would assume world destruction. Now, I gotta give a massive shout out to the guys behind the screen knowing and doing this, in the way that they can just justify sacrificing people off to appease some kind of gods for some kind of bigger picture. Now, for me, any way you cut it, it's wrong. Now, I'm not gonna spoil the movie, but the last 10 minutes of this movie might be some of the most insane cinema I've seen in a very long time. Just know it gets crazy. And if for some reason you thought, I can easily survive that, you'll be thinking twice after this next one. It Follows is a movie premising around an entity that relentlessly pursues its victims after being passed through sexual contact. The movie starts out with us meeting our main character, Jay, who's a 19-year-old woman who goes on a date with a guy named Hugh, whose behavior is a bit nervous, claiming that he sees a girl that Jay can't see. Of course, after sleeping together, Hugh then explains to Jay that she is now cursed with this entity that will relentlessly follow her, taking on all different kinds of appearances. Now, once again, this entity is passed through sexual contact, and if you don't pass on this curse, the entity will kill you. Now, once this curse was passed on to Jay, she continuously sees this creature getting closer and closer, no matter how far she gets. Now, for those of you thinking, I would just hop in my car and drive away somewhere, yeah, that doesn't work like that. Jay then passes the curse on to her friend who said, hey, I'll take the curse from you. Shout out to Paul, because for me, I'm not taking the curse for absolutely no one. The movie does technically end with the entity getting closer, but we don't see anybody actually die. So I'm assuming they either got away or passed it on to somebody who's off screen. To sum up the movie, if you can keep it in your pants, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. But for some reason, folks find that a little bit difficult. Now, Saw for me is one of those movies that you definitely could survive, but you wouldn't be the same after it. And for 99% of us who are saying we would be able to survive these traps, you're lying to yourself. If you're unfamiliar with Saw, it's a deadly game orchestrated by a mysterious killer who forces individuals to confront their darkest secrets and test their survival instincts. Now look, John Kramer, if you're watching this, I don't want any smoke. I'm not passing the test. I'm not even playing the audio recording to start the trap, so don't try me. In the original Saw movie, it opens up with 2 men, Adam and Dr. Lawrence, who are chained in a grimy bathroom. Between them lies a corpse holding a gun and a cassette player. Both men then find tapes in their pockets with the words "Play Me" on them. Adam is told he must escape, while Lawrence is instructed to kill Adam by 6 a.m. or his wife and daughter will die. Now, the thing about these Saw movies, it not only tests your survival, but it also tests your morality, with things like, will you save your loved ones and kill a more or less innocent man, or do you let them die? Now, with watching every single Saw movie and knowing how it goes, you can survive this movie. You just will not be the same person you were before then, especially in this situation where you either have to kill an unarmed man to save your family or just let them die. Now, all in all, Saw is one of those movies that I personally would never want to be in, because it seems like regardless of what you do, you still won't win the game. Funny Games is a chilling home invasion story. 2 sadistic young men terrorize a family, and to be honest, throughout this movie, it definitely breaks the 4th wall, challenging viewers' expectations for violence in cinema. The movie follows a wealthy family arriving to their lake house vacation home, where 2 polite young men, Peter and Paul, appear and ask for help. This is horror movie 101. You're in a remote cabin on the lakeside, and 2 people you have never seen before decide to come and knock on your door and say, hey, do you have any milk? Not answering the door. It's as simple as that. Now, of course, in horror movie fashion, Peter and Paul then manipulate the family psychologically, trapping them inside of their own home. They then humiliate and torture the family in their way of playing a game. It gets to the point of where they're actually placing bets, waging on which one of these people is going to survive. This is one of those movies where trusting people goes absolutely wrong, especially, as I said before, being in a remote cabin somewhere, away from everyone. Now, I know a lot of you are going to sit here and say, well, I just wouldn't let them in. Trust me, if 2 people truly wanted to break into your lake house and do this, they could most likely do it with ease. But at the end of the day, you really don't have much of a choice. A Quiet Place is one of those franchises that is truly impossible to survive. Not only because you can't talk or make any bits of noise, noises. The actual survival rate is so small. Now, as you know, A Quiet Place has to do with creatures that land on Earth, who are now attracted to sound, and only sound. Now, me personally, this might be the shortest part in the video. I am not surviving that movie, and I can guarantee at least 95% of you guys are not surviving either, because all we do is talk. There's no way I can sit in a car for 20 minutes and not talk, let alone not more or less be able to talk for the rest of my life, on top of making any bits and pieces of sound. Imagine you're going to eat a candy bar and all of a sudden one of these things come out of nowhere and kill you. There's nothing you can do. Survival rate in this movie is quite literally 4% maybe of the human population survived this movie, and I'm giving you 4% as a very high standard. The Descent is one of those movies that I would personally never find myself in, because there's no way I'm going cave diving in a cave system that's never been discovered and never scaled by anyone else, on top of having high claustrophobia and the fact that there are creatures down there that no one knows about because it's yet never been discovered. Now, The Descent is one of those movies that will go down in history as one of the most insane movies I've ever seen. Not only because you have a group of friends who decide to go down in this cavern that has never been explored, also because of what happens. They end up getting lost in the tunnel and having no idea where up is up and down is down. Then all of their flashlights die out in their headlamps. So now you're not only in pitch black darkness, but you're in a place that you've never seen before. And it's pitch black, so you more or less can't see. People then start losing their minds and going crazy because they have no idea what they're walking into. People end up falling, people end up breaking ankles, and then the cherry on top is these cave-dwelling creatures that kind of look like vampires that are living underneath inside of this cave. And for around 95% of us, there ain't no way we're going into a cave, let alone surviving in pitch black darkness with no food, no flashlights, and having no idea how to actually rock climb. You finally have Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, I don't think people genuinely understand the brutality of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. I know we've kind of lost the plot in previous years, but the original 1974 version might be one of the most gruesome movies you've ever seen, which of course starts with that normal horror movie trope of a group of friends driving in Texas. They end up seeing a hitchhiker who they end up picking up to try and help, not knowing that he's a part of some giant plot of a cannibalistic family who's not only going to capture these people, but slowly kill and eat them as well. And it's also the first time we've ever seen Leatherface, who which most people think is just some dumb, docile person who can take shotgun shots, but he's decently intelligent and extremely fast and strong. Not only are you unlikely to survive Leatherface himself, other parts of the cannibalistic family also have key attributes that add and make him stronger, especially with the fact of being trapped inside of his house. We see it in the movies and we see it in the games. Once you're trapped in Leatherface's house, 9 times out of 10, there's no way you're getting out. And even if you do escape Leatherface, you may end up like the previous character in the newest adaptation of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, who goes back. She goes back to spin the block and try and get revenge for her friends who died in the original movie. And what happened to her? She got cooked. But there you have it. There's a list of horror movies that, in my opinion, you have zero chance of surviving. I know a lot of you are going to go in the comment section and say, I'm built different, I can survive this, this would be easy, this is what I would do. You have to understand that these horror movie characters are not going in with the knowledge that we have about horror movies. They're going in blind. They did not get a script, they did not get a plot. They are just playing how they're supposed to be played out. Now, me personally, if I was in some of these horror movies, I'm 100% surviving, because I'm not doing all of the normal dumb stuff that they do, but unfortunately for them, they just don't know it yet. Final Destination 2000. Final Destination is a supernatural horror film about a group of students who survive a plane crash, but are now targeted by death. The movie premises around Alex Browning, who has a premonition that the school plane is going to explode on their way to Paris. He then convinces several of his classmates to leave the plane shortly before it takes off, and indeed explodes. Now, this has got to be one of the most wild intros to a movie I have ever seen. Everybody's super excited to go on their class field trip to Paris, and then all of a sudden, their friend... Yo, I just had a That's So Raven moment that literally the plane is going to explode. We got to get off. They then walk their way off of the plane takes off, and then boom! Plane explodes. Everyone who got off the plane survives. But as I said before, they're now targeted by death. And what we learn throughout the movie is that yes, you can avoid death to a certain extent, but when you're supposed to go, you have to go, or death is going to follow you in the most ridiculous ways possible. Now, granted, I'm talking about Final Destination 2000, but if you've seen any of the other Final Destinations, the way people are unalived is quite literally insane. We've seen people get unalived by swimming pools, other people get killed by tires, and some other people just get electrocuted randomly. These movies are genuinely insane, but that's the main reason of why I'm putting them on this list to be impossible to survive. Now, somebody may say, okay, well, you can put someone else in your place right before you die to last a little bit longer. Yes, technically you can do that. The only way to get yourself lower on the list is by unaliving the other people before you. But from what I understand, it has to come from death itself, not from you doing it to them. More or less meaning that you are 100% cooked no matter how way you look at it. If you survived in this movie, you're gonna get packed up by the end. Bird Box. The premise around Bird Box is that creatures landed out of nowhere on Earth, and somehow when you look at them, they alter your brain, causing you to do things that you normally wouldn't, if you know what I mean. Now, the other crazy part about this movie is some people who do see the creatures somehow don't have that urge to unalive themselves, but to just unalive everybody else, kind of giving them like a ravenous rabies, where for some reason they think you're the threat when you're not. Their eyes are red, their eyes are bulging out of their head, and they just want to do one thing, unalive you. Now, yes, throughout the movie, most people figure out, okay, I can't look outside. So what do? They put on blindfolds or bandanas to cover their eyes from seeing the creatures, which do, of course, give you that massive urge to unalive yourself. But as I said, the biggest problem in this whole entire movie is that once you put that blindfold on, you can't see. I can't see anything, right? So now I don't only have to worry about the creatures and unaliving myself by taking my mask off. I have to worry about the other people who for some reason don't have that urge to unalive themselves, but to unalive me. So pretty much what I'm saying is if you're in the dark, you can't see, but other people can see in the dark and they're trying to kill you at the same point that you're trying to survive the other creatures. It's pretty much impossible. Now, how are some people affected differently from these creatures? I have absolutely no idea. We've never gotten a Bird Box Part 2 because the people in the original Bird Box movie technically did survive. They got away from the city on a boat, they took their blindfolds off, and seemingly were fine. But as I said, we've never gotten a follow-up movie to tell us really what happened to them. Me personally, having a blindfold on, if I take my glasses off, I can't see anyways. There's no way these creatures are going to be able to know that I saw them. But on top of that, while having a blindfold on, I'm having other people try to kill me at the same time? Yeah, you're cooked. You're not surviving. Cabin in the Woods. Cabin in the Woods is a horror film that follows a group of college students, lured to a remote cabin in the middle of the woods, seemingly for a vacation, not knowing that they're there to be sacrificed to monsters, which happen to be a part of a ritual to appease the ancient gods. Now, my favorite part of this horror movie is the fact that they play into all of the horror movie tropes. You have the dumb jock, you have the virgin, you have the smart one, and you have the fool. Now, when you first start watching this movie, you have absolutely no idea what is going on. You want to know where all these monsters are coming from. Now, little do these teens know that this happens every year. The people who are working underground to appease the gods and make sure that they no longer come to Earth and keep them happy, they sacrifice a group of people every year, which, as I said, why it's funny why they play into those normal horror movie tropes. Now, if these gods for some reason didn't get what they wanted and didn't get the people that they wanted to unalive at the certain time, the gods would then come back to Earth and wreak havoc. Now, I'm not personally sure how they were able to make that deal with the gods underground and figure out, okay, look, if we sacrifice some people every year, you guys aren't going to come back, right? I don't know how that deal worked, because if you really thought about it, if the gods wanted to come back, they could just come back and unalive everybody. Why would they have to make a little bit of a deal? Now, the end of this movie is genuinely crazy because you see all of these creatures and monsters that you didn't think were possible come out of absolutely nowhere and terrorize everything underground, which is of course where the lab is placed, where all of these things are happening. Nothing is done by accident in this movie. Everything has a purposeful piece and a purposeful moment having to do with appeasing the gods and making them happy. A Quiet Place. A Quiet Place is a science fiction horror movie that follows a family struggling to survive in the post-apocalyptic world, overrun by blind alien monsters that only attack by hearing. Like I said, the monsters hurt humans by sound, so even the slightest noise could be completely deadly. Now, in my opinion, this is by far the hardest horror movie to survive. One, because I am an A1 yapper. I talk for a living. I talk all the time. That is genuinely all I do. I actually love to hear myself talk. So imagine me in a world where I cannot speak. No, I cannot do that. Two, I like to do things that make noise. I like to drive my car. I like to walk. I like to do this. I like to do that. I like to listen to music. Even with headphones on, if those monsters hear you, you are cooked. There is no humanly possible way to survive a quiet place. Yes, we've seen people on the island that have gotten away from the monsters because they cannot go into water. That is genuinely the only way to survive. If you find a remote island in the middle of nowhere and decide to go there, you should be fine. Now, if somehow these monsters were able to land there, I'm not sure. We know they can jump very high and we know that they can run really fast, but they cannot swim. They're for some reason absolutely terrified of water, and that is the only way to genuinely survive a quiet place. Now, the other problem with me surviving a quiet place is I have a massive chronic fear of the ocean. Not really the ocean, but more or less being trapped in the middle of the ocean. Sharks are my favorite animal, which is all good, all fine and good. But imagine just being in the ocean, got a life vest on, and your feet are just dangling in the water. Yes, I am good on that. I would probably die before the sharks ever got to me. But a quiet place, yes, any sound you make, you're done. The only way to survive is by being in water. But as we saw in A Quiet Place 2, somehow the aliens were able to get onto the island, and we have absolutely no idea how. The only way it makes sense to me is some of them were still up in the outer space, they came down and landed on the island, which was able to unalive everybody on the island. But yes, in my opinion, the only way to live and survive in a quiet place is if you have a boat, stay on the boat, make sure you have enough food, and stay in the middle of the ocean. That is seemingly the only way to do it. Because as I said, the people in A Quiet Place 2 thought that they were safe on that island, until those monsters somehow crash landed on the island and unalived everybody. There's no way to make any noise, there's no way to make any sound, and the only way to survive is by being in water. Because of course, they can't swim. But hopefully you guys did go and enjoy today's video, and if you did, don't forget to smack a like on it. That'd be greatly appreciated. Comment down below what else you guys want to see on the channel. Thank you guys so much for all the constant support as well. And with all of that being said, guys, my name is Chris, and of course, I will catch you guys on the next one.